Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto Manga Chapter review. This one's going to be for Chapter 64, which is called Control. So as you can see here, pretty cool cover page with Shikamaru. Overall, like a lot of the recent chapters, I just feel like this chapter is okay. It's solid. It didn't do anything particularly bad, but I also don't think it had any particularly amazing moments. It's just the next obvious step in the plot, but I'm also not really sure exactly where we're at sort of with the scope of the plot and where we're at, because it's a relatively big fight, and sort of developments from this chapter make it seem like no, there's a full-on kind of battle that's going to be happening here, because it looks like Naruto and Shikamaru are going to be joining this. Potentially Sasuke could arrive at any point as well. We're having this fight 40 clicks outside the Leaf Village, and that's what we're doing here. And I'm just not really sure where this really fits in sort of with Code and his plan, and then getting us towards the time skip, and all those sort of things. It just kind of feels like, okay, I'm assuming we're building over the course of this volume, because this is a chapter that starts a new volume, I believe. We're building up to something relatively big, I suppose, by chapter 64, 5, 6, 7? 67, I suppose, as a volume ender, should have something maybe more significant. And what's that going to be? Like a character death? Does Code just escape with a character, Boruto or Kawaki? That's what I'm not too sure about, in that it feels like we need something big to happen, because right now so much of the plot has just been focused on basically two subplots, one of which is super mundane and has taken far too long to happen, that being everyone back at the Leaf Village simply figuring out to go after Boruto. It finally happens in this chapter, but I think it's taken way too long to get here. Sure, it hasn't taken up too much page count over the course of the last couple of chapters, but simply the fact that it's dragged on for 3 chapters, 3 months or so, is really, really frustrating, that we're still figuring this out. The fight, again, it has that just weird Boruto manga fight sort of pacing and choreography, where it just feels like, even though it's two relatively powerful characters here going at it, it just feels like we are a few levels below them actually going all out. And especially, you sort of roll your eyes a little bit at the end of the chapter when Boruto finally says, I guess we can go all out now. And then the chapter ends with this other Boruto cliffhanger, and it's like, can you please just clarify what's going on with Boruto? I get it's a kind of a little bit of a mystery, the exact status of him right now. It's the main character undergoing this transformation, what's going on. But they're not doing, I think, the best job at doing end of chapter cliffhangers when it's clear they're just going to drag it on. So that's not to say there's nothing good here. I actually really like the kind of mention that, okay, ooh, cool, Naruto's using Sage Mode, and they're sort of implying that, again, Naruto and Shikamaru are going into battle. I am excited to see Naruto, without all these other giant power boosts, go back to what I think most people consider to be one of his coolest power boosts, and the thing that really got across, okay, here is a proof that he is a super skilled shinobi. The fact that he was able to perfect the Toad Sage mode ahead of Jiraiya. Jiraiya only has a sort of incomplete version. Naruto actually completed it, and now that he's a much older shinobi, and he even mentions the wisdom of age here, I'm very excited to see what sort of Sage mode this Toad Sage mode is like at full power, being able to be utilized by someone like Naruto. And I think we'll be pretty impressed by it. And that, yeah, I think what they're going to do with Naruto and Sasuke is kind of show us that, okay, they've lost some of their flashiest skills in jutsu, but they still got a lot going on just with Mangekyo Sharingan, and then Naruto with Sage Mode and just everything else he has going on. It'd be cool if he incorporated some of his father's jutsus with the speed stuff. And that's the big thing with Sage Mode, is that they clarified this in the war arc, that Sage Mode is actually sort of quicker reaction time and stuff like that than some of the chakra modes. So this could be pretty cool actually to see this. Naruto actually having to fight a little bit more like Sasuke now, to use the speed dodging to his advantage, whereas he did tend to be the sort of tank in previous battles. So in terms of speculation about Sage Mode, that's kind of cool. Not that that much was done with it specifically in this chapter, but it's sort of an exciting thing to consider. So yeah, let's just get going through this chapter sort of page by page. I think we'll go through it relatively quickly. So of course the cliffhanger from last time out was Boruto going into this more advanced karma mode, and the question is, who's in control here? Is this Momoshiki, Borushiki, or is Boruto actually in control here? Or they introduced the concept of like, you gain the skills of generations of Otsutsuki. So is it like Boruto sort of like half in control, half not under control of Momoshiki, but just the sort of the karma and the skill thing that happens here? What it turns out is that it's actually Boruto in control. Kawaki sort of freaks out temporarily, thinking that they all actually think it's Momoshiki's consciousness coming out, including Code. Why does it emerge to this degree while you're still only a vessel? But then Boruto speaks and he's like, move back more, Kawaki, it ain't safe. And they're like, whoa, Boruto's in control of this? So he charges at Code here, activates shadow clones, and really kind of pushes Code back here. Code is really taken aback with this. We do eventually turn it around here. We get into the fight. And it's probably the first time we really get to see, I suppose, in a more even fight, how Code actually uses his claw marks to his advantage. And it's kind of cool here as a counter to the clones. He puts some of the claw marks on the clones, and because the clones tend to like run side by side, he can just put a claw mark on one of them and basically kick from that clone, kick another one of the clones and get rid of it. So it ends up with this kind of unique way of sort of getting the clones almost to fight each other by using them as sort of just platforms for the claw marks. So it's a little cool choreography early on here as we see the clones trying to stop this. Kind of a cool moment here as eventually one of them grabs Code's arm, the arm just coming out of the claw mark, and sort of, throws Code back into the kind of real world here. So a bit of a counterplay here. Boruto gets a punch in, and we end up with a bit of a kind of stalemate here. Boruto is doing some stuff against Code here, but it's still relatively even. Everyone wonders what's going on here. Ada, back at base, I suppose, talks about how she knows about Amado's meds. Code doesn't seem to be aware of these, but she says at the very least it seems now he's able to channel Momoshiki's power without his mind getting taken over. And she wonders, like, what if you go down before you regain your true strength? This is when we cut back over to the village and we find out that, Naruto has clones meditating, so he's activating Sage Mode, and is telling everyone to switch over their focus to hone in on Boruto's chakra, because, if they find Boruto, they'll find Kawaki, and so on. Again, like I said before, I think this plot here, with this guy who's been watching everyone at the house, has taken far too long. This could have been resolved like 2-3 chapters ago, honestly. But the fun thing here is Sage Mode. So Shikamaru arrives on the scene and talks about how, I can't let you go alone. You don't have Kurama's power anymore. It'd be suicide. And Naruto says, are you telling me to abandon the kids? No, I'm not trying to stop you. I'm going with you. Since, unfortunately, Sasuke isn't back from tracking Code yet, and Sai is on Amado guard duty, I'll go with you. So this is when Hinata and Himawari actually arrive in the scene, and Hinata actually says, I'll go too. I can't just stay still. Naruto does say, think of Himawari. What if something happens to you? Please stay here. And Shikamaru agrees with this. Please don't insist, Hinata. Listen to Naruto for my sake, if nothing else. And ultimately, Hinata looks down at Himawari and agrees to it ultimately. And I think this makes sense. I think there was some controversy about this while the chapter was still kind of kind of half coming out in like bits and pieces, the sort of spoilers ahead of the release, and people freaking out, kind of thinking that like, oh, they're not letting Hinata fight. But I think it's a very logical point to bring up here that Boruto's at risk already. Naruto as the Hokage sort of, is always going to be the one to put himself at risk. It doesn't make a lot of sense for their family unit, for Hinata to also put herself at risk, because that would potentially leave, if everyone got killed, Himawari as an orphan, and Naruto especially would not want that to happen. He had that sort of rough upbringing. He wouldn't want that for his own daughter. So the decision is made correct here, and I think it's just actually a nice thing that they did include in the chapter Hinata even suggesting that she go along with this as well. So I do like that here, and that she can, help protect Himawari at home, help protect the village while a lot of the major players are away. Himawari does say to her father, it'll be okay, right, Papa? You'll come back safely with Big Bro and Kawaki. And so he heads off. He activates Sage Mode and says, have you forgotten who your dad is? And so Hinata and Himawari do look worried, but we get a little sort of internal monologue from Hinata saying, Naruto, Boruto, Kawaki, please stay safe. And I like that because we haven't really focused too much on the Hinata Kawaki dynamic, which is having her mention him along with it as part of the family unit is actually a good thing. I do like that. Next, we return to the fight, and we have a pretty interesting point here, actually. Boruto tries to absorb Code's claw marks. He can't, and it's because they're not made of chakra. They're mostly physically embodied chakra, but there's iron mixed in from his blood, making them composites, and you can't absorb them. So that's a decent explanation, I think, to why it is actually a tricky ability to deal with. Kawaki asks Boruto the question, where's Momoshiki gone? And he says, I don't know. Whether it's an effect of the meds or not, it never happened before. And Kawaki just points out that it's reliable, you better not lose control suddenly. Let's focus on taking him down together. That'll solve everything. But Code is just like, oh, whatever the effect of these meds, they can't actually get rid of Momoshiki. You're still an Otsutsuki, and you can still be used as a sacrifice. This is where Boruto, it's a little bit of an interesting point here, is that they, of course, don't know about Ada. And Code is talking to Ada kind of secretly, of course. He's getting information because she can see everything with her ability. So suddenly Boruto's like, wait, how does he know about that? So they're beginning to sort of maybe catch on that someone is like overwatching this situation for Code. And yeah, he's just focused on the Otsutsuki plan and using someone as a sacrifice for the Divine Tree. And he's actually very happy with the idea that Boruto is going to be a quality sacrifice to make this happen. The completion of your Otsutsukification is no longer an issue of if, but when. I'll be back for you once you reach peak ripeness. So he's preparing to go. He grabs Kawaki and is about to leave because that's the deal he has with Ada. Goodbye for now, I'll see you soon. But this is when we get a pretty cool moment here. He says, let's go Kawaki, she's waiting. He activates shadow clones, makes a shadow clone, Code blocks it. Boruto comes in with her Sengon, and this forces the kind of the save here. So Code is not able to take Kawaki away so suddenly. And this is kind of an interesting point here in that Kawaki had come out here on his own to sort of sacrifice himself to save everyone else. And now kind of Code points out, I thought you'd agreed to come with me. What's going on here? And he says, don't get the wrong idea. Everything I've done is for Lord Seventh. Exactly. And if we can just take you down, that would be the fastest and easiest. So he's starting to get annoyed here, Code. And yeah, we go into sort of the final stage of the fight here, but we do cut back to Shikamaru and Naruto. So he has found Boruto using the sensing ability of Sage Mode, roughly 40 clicks to the northwest, and there's someone else's chakra he doesn't recognize. They tell Ino to kind of get the security on the village up, and we get the full status here of Naruto in Sage Mode has 2 clones back at the village, gathering nature energy, so he is going to have quite a long Sage Mode, basically. And because we haven't really seen it done like this, because again, Sage Mode has changed a lot, because um, in a lot of the recent times he's used Sage Mode, the person gathering nature energy has always been Kurama. So Naruto has always been a sort of 2-in-1, because of the internal kind of being of Kurama. He doesn't have that anymore, which is why he has to use the clones. But he does note here, and Shikamaru kind of questions him on this, that's not a mode you can sustain for too long, isn't it? How long do you think you can go? But Naruto says, don't worry, quite a lot longer than before, actually. Call it the wisdom of age. Shikamaru is sort of shocked by it, laughs this off, kind of, but it seems to be the truth, I guess, that Naruto can last much longer in Sage Mode because he's more experienced with it, and so on. And yeah, that's cool. So I guess I can't remember the exact numbers that they had for Sage Mode from before, but it was a relatively, small timer, and that's why he needed multiple clones. But yeah, I suppose like the fight isn't going to go on long enough to where he'll need all of these clones, but they're doing that for a reason, the sort of countdown timer. We'll see how long it takes to travel all the way out to the fight. But it is interesting, Shikamaru is going with him, so I guess we're going to get to see Shikamaru fight, which outside of sort of one-off uses of the his signature jutsu to just trap people, we haven't really seen him go all out, so we've never got the greatest sense for maybe what his powers are like as an adult. So that could be cool, and he could actually be able to counter Code relatively well. I do wonder how the whole shadow thing works with regards to if there's any sort of interaction with the claw marks, where if he attaches his shadow to a claw mark, if Code uses that claw mark, does that mean that Code is automatically caught in the shadow possession or anything? It could be cool, because again, the idea is that Code leaves these marks all around the place, but Shikamaru's thing is often like catching things that stay in position, so it could be cool. He could be quite useful actually in this fight, especially with Naruto able to fight up close with the frog, frog Kumite, and the high reaction times. Yeah, we get the fight going off here. There's a few kind of near misses here. They have some taijutsu. There's a kick. There's Code using his ability again. They sort of get shots in on each other. Boruto goes for a vanishing Rasengan. Code barely dodges. Kawaki can't really do too much in this fight, of course, because he doesn't have a lot of power here. He does know that was a bit of a close call. I'll have to watch for those vanishing Rasengans. But then Boruto kind of goes for it. So cheap tricks don't work. Oh well. I guess we just have to go all out. And before he can do anything, Boruto drops to a knee, is shocked. Kawaki is shocked as well. Everyone is. He sort of clutches his chest and then collapses to the ground. And it basically looks like he's having a heart attack or something like that. Because they're not really emphasizing that the karma mark anything is happening here or anything like that. Nothing's happening with like his eyes necessarily. It looks basically like he's having a heart attack of some sort. We'll see what happens here. It's a weird one because of course, like, we know Boruto survives, and then if they are going to kill him off, like, they're going to have him implant a karma in someone else so he can be reborn. But I don't think they will actually kill him off in any way, even though they have the out to it if they want to. I'm guessing this is just going to be the meds here, that the meds suppress Otsutsuki's stuff, but because he sort of was using Otsutsuki power, the meds maybe are like kicking in doubly to sort of suppress it. And so it's this weird thing where it prevents Momoshiki from coming out, but if he does need to use karma, the meds backfire on him in some way. I'm not sure what to make of this. At the very least, what it does is it seems to take Boruto out of action, and now we're in this situation where Code is next to Kawaki and Boruto, and neither of them can really do anything against him. So we need someone to arrive on the scene ASAP. And I don't know if we're meant to view the sort of timing of all of this as like, we in the previous scene, literally just see Shikamaru and Naruto leave the village and have to travel 40 clicks. Has that happened before and they're basically on their way so they could arrive any time now? Or is this setting the stage for actually Sasuke will sort of step in here because he might be ahead of them, and then Naruto and Shikamaru enter the fray? But this is becoming quite a big battle here. Like, Code can't possibly do like a 3-on-1 against Naruto, Sasuke, and Shikamaru. So again, what's going on here? Are they just going to get to a situation where they force Code to retreat without having succeeded? And we go into maybe the time skip with the idea of we need to train up to take on Code. That none of us individually are strong enough to fully take him out, so everyone needs to do training. I'm not sure. There's a lot to consider here because, again, Demon, they've set up that he is going to be a bit of a nightmare to deal with if he ever joins the battle. Ada has specifically said she's not really a combatant. So what's happening here is the real question. I'm not sure. And it does make the series at this point kind of difficult to predict just because they're not giving us a lot of information on some of this stuff. Like, I wish they would just come out and explain what's going on with Boruto, because it's a bit like, he's not going to die from a heart attack here. So, is this just a way to depower Boruto? But then what was necessarily the point of having the empowering moment beforehand? And it not necessarily accomplishing too much apart from buying time to get us to the other fights that are going to happen. That's what I'm not sure about. Is this just kind of getting us to Shikamaru, Naruto, and maybe Sasuke versus Code? That's all I can really think of. But yeah, like I said, the highlights were the sort of, tease of Sage Mode Naruto going to be a thing coming up, Shikamaru joining the fight, and then the action between Boruto and Code was decent, and I think it's actually in the anime going to be very strong. I think that this is going to be a very cool episode when they get around to animating this. It just, as usual, sometimes when it's not the really big parts of the fight, the action can be a little subpar in the manga. But I think that's basically everything I want to talk about in this chapter. Like I said, I just want some bigger character stuff to happen here, just so I have a better sense for what's going on. Code's plan and when the timing and a lot of this stuff just feels weird about when it's going to happen, and I don't have much of a sense for where we're going. So yeah, like I said, solid chapter, a few interesting things to sort of be excited about heading into next time out, but I don't think the chapter itself was amazingly strong. It's just, yeah, okay. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this chapter, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and